Hi, I'm Dr. Sarah Warren. I'm the owner of the ARC Professional Group and Oasis Center for Wellbeing. Today I want to talk about why we integrate yoga into some of our psychotherapy work. It really has two purposes. First, it helps the therapist help someone ground themselves if they're feeling overwhelmed, anxious, if they feel like they're just too agitated to do the work of therapy. We, in our practice, work a lot with severe anxiety, bipolar disorder, significant problems with addiction, and in those kinds of situations, where there's a lot of intensity that people are dealing with, trauma also, it can really help someone settle down to do the work of learning about themselves, of generating insight. Second is that people who are struggling with these kinds of challenges can find themselves in their day-to-day lives overwhelmed, anxious, having difficulty navigating stresses, interpersonal relationships. So these become techniques that they can use as they're living their lives to improve the quality of their lives. So it's really a twofold purpose. You might be wondering how yoga relates to mindfulness. Mindfulness has really become almost like the standard of care for most psychotherapy practices, and we use mindfulness a lot. It is extremely helpful to teach people things like breathing techniques. Yoga is different in that it's a more physical, embodied process that it can stand as something that complements mindfulness. It doesn't have to be instead of, but I think of it as sort of extending beyond mindfulness. This is one of my go-to poses. I can do it in my professional work outfit. Sometimes I'm even wearing a blazer. If I were wearing clothes that were really constricting or a skirt, I might grab my yoga pants, duck into the restroom, and change into those. This is the only piece of equipment. Only wardrobe, no blocks, no mats, no straps, no nothing. And the amount of space that I need is this much for this pose. So it's very accessible in terms of just being able to do this in your office. This is a restorative pose. I learned it years ago in a restorative yoga class. My legs are pressed very much against the wall. There's no space between me and the wall, basically at any point. So I am being supported by the wall, and I'm also being supported by the floor. This has a grounding effect, particularly if you stay in it for a while. So some of the yoga poses do entail getting down on the ground. You might wonder about that. I have to overcome my reserve, my formality, my sense of professionalism to get down on the floor. I have arthritis. I am able to get up from the floor and get down onto the floor. It's a little inelegant, but it is doable. I never get stuck on the floor. So you might be thinking, physically, you don't have the capacity to get down on the floor and do this demonstration. You might be wondering, well, are there other ways that you could incorporate yoga, other kinds of poses? The answer is yes. There are quite a few poses that can be done standing only, and there are also some what are called micro practices, which involve things like just using your hands. After the pose, I would want to debrief with the person. I would want to ask them what their experience was, how they felt different, if at all, from how they felt before they went into the pose. I would want to ask them if they could imagine doing this on their own at home. And then if they feel like they can't imagine it, I would talk to them some about the kinds of situations in which it might be helpful to them. And I would say, you know, there are many other things, yoga practices and other kinds of techniques that we can introduce and you can put in the hopper and try on for size. Not everything's going to work for you. There's a lot of options out there, but this is one to try. You might be thinking that some clients might react poorly, that they might be sort of like, you know, I'm here to do talking, that's what I'm up for, you know. I would not do this in a first session, probably ever. I want to have a rapport with somebody. I want to be able to kind of read them. I want to be able to have what I think is going to be a conversation in which they feel comfortable telling me that perhaps they don't want to do it. And I do ask. I ask, would you feel comfortable doing this? So they get to opt out. I don't think I've ever had anybody opt out. I do think that I had one woman who I had not been working with for very long. I did, of course, ask her permission, but I think that she ended up leaving shortly after. And I think that part of what might have been going on is that it might have just felt like it was not a good fit for her, and she didn't have enough of a history with me to really feel like she could say that. If you're intrigued about how to incorporate yoga into your psychotherapy practice, you can join us on Saturday, February 12th from 9 to 10 a.m. where we will have a demonstration by our yoga teacher who practices yoga for mental health. She has over 10 years of experience. She is a gifted teacher. She is a psychiatrist in the making, and I think it will be a great opportunity to learn more about how it looks in practice.